Hello, my name is Janelle Chase, and I am doing the first video of our interactive learning videos following week 1 of challenge. So the first problem is from homework 1, and it's number 2, and it's a 3-part question, and the first part is asking us to find a function for the edge length of a cube. We're using the variable d, and d represents the diagonal of a cube. And here you can see I already drew out my cube, and the diagonal is what's cutting through the cube, and that's d. But for the first part, we're going to do we're finding the edge length of a cube. And so this would be, right here would be all of our edge length representing length, width, and height. For the first part, we're going to kind of make this a 2D and also look at that diagonal from looking down at it from a top view, which means basically if we use this bottom square, it's like looking at it like from that point to that point. And because it's a cube, we know that our base is square, so we're going to use Pythagorean theorem. And because both of them are a, I'm just going to write it out. Well, let's just say first our base is a square, and we know we have this is a, and this is a, and then the dotted line. We're going to call that x because we made this two-dimensional. We're going to call that x, which is the looking down from the top version of d. Okay, and from Pythagorean theorem, which we know is a squared, and in this case a squared plus a squared equals x squared, which simplifies to 2a squared equals x squared. And to find x, we're going to simplify each, and we're going to end up with x being equal to a root 2. And so that's from looking down. But now we're going to add in our third dimension and go from looking from the front. And so that's going to look pretty much similar to the same, except now we can call it d because we're representing the 3 dimensions. So this is d, this is what x was, and this is a. So d equals the square root of x squared, just making it easier. Also using the Pythagorean theorem. Yeah, x squared plus a squared, and we found out what x is here. So if we substitute that in, that's a root 2 squared plus our a squared, and all of that is square rooted. Okay, and set that equal to d. So if we simplify, we're going to end up with 2a squared plus a squared, and that's all square rooted, which simplifies to 3, the root of 3a squared. And to find a, or simplify again, and that's a root 3. And that equals our d. So that all equals our d. And so because we're trying to find our edge length, which is a, because we know that d equals a root 3, to find a, we're just going to divide by 3, and we're going to get d over square root of 3, and that represents edge length of our cube. And now we're going to move on to part 2. And in part 1, we found out the side length, which we use to represent a, is d over the square root of 3. And so now we're going to find surface area. And we know that surface area is basically the area of one side, which is a squared, because each side is a square. So it's a squared times 6 because a cube has 6 sides. And last time we found that a equals d over the square root of 3. So surface area formula is right here, and we're just going to copy that in. We're going to square this whole thing, which simplifies to 6d squared. The square root is going to go away, and it's just going to be over 3. And 6 over 3, we can also simplify that to 2, which sets our surface area equal to 2d squared. And that's how we find surface area. The last part of this question is to find the volume. We're finding the volume of the same cube using the diagonal, which we use to represent d. And in the first part, we found the side length, which we use the variable a to represent our side lengths. And so we know that a equals the d over the square root of 3. And volume is basically what makes a two-dimensional object three-dimensional. And so for a cube is a square made it three-dimensional, and it becomes a cube. So that makes us, so our area is a squared because it's a times a, but to add the third dimension, we're going to multiply it by another a, making it a cube. So we get the equation b equals a cubed. And because we already found our a, this is a simple problem because we're just plugging things in. So d over the square root of 3 times, or to the power of 3 because it's being cubed, which simplifies to d cubed over the square root of 3. So basically that whole thing. Yeah, that's it.